It would be great to have someone who could do our work for us, right? Someone to prevent us from making mistakes. It would be great to have someone who could do our work for us, right? Someone to assist with our routine professionally and allow us to devote our time to communicating with our closest people. If only we could get results without wasting our time for nothing. Unfortunately, it's impossible in real life. But wait, Light Forex Social Trading. Spend your time doing what really matters to you.
Hi guys, Piotr here, 8 AM CET, 7 AM London, meaning this is a pre-London Open, only here, Light Forex Global YouTube channel. We are going to discuss the situation on the market ahead of the European Open, but what is important, partially based on the information which hit the market yesterday, late afternoon, or even closer to the US close. I'm a little bit skeptic, and looks like I was quite positive yesterday, even during our afternoon meeting, right? We were discussing possibilities of the, for example, long on US indices. We were discussing possibilities of the long on the yen crosses, but again, later, hour after meeting, some news hit the market, which caused the switch from the risk on sentiment to neutral or even risk off. So currently I'm short cable, right? If you remember, we were discussing that maybe a long around 2150 might be the solution, the case, and I'm short Nasdaq. And if you remember, there was a discussion about the possibility to have a long, and actually the long worked well towards the end of the session. Anyway, I took this short, as you can see, at the top of this rally yesterday, and I took the short on the cable based on the news, not based on what we discussed. But if you remember, the situation here we discussed yesterday, some kind of the comparison and what may happen here. You were able to grab the shorts at the top of that possible range. Anyway, that's what we are going to discuss today. Let's start with the risk warning, guys. Please bear in mind, trading FX on margin carries a high level of risk, may not be suitable for investors. You can sustain a loss of some or all your initial investment, so please do not invest the money that you cannot afford to lose. Seek education, gain experience before risking real money. However, past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Okay. So I'm sitting short on 2, and just not to be disturbed by the positions, for you to focus on the chart and what we are going to discuss. I'm going to hide this. All right, guys, we have a growing tensions in Hong Kong, and looks like I didn't confirm with my sources in London, right? But looks like yesterday people went out in UK, right? So people are on the street in UK. Nothing extraordinary yet, and again, I couldn't confirm with my sources in London. I will try to get some information later today, but looks like also Italy might be the next, so it's worth to watch euro. So it's worth to watch overall sentiment, right? That was one of the reasons I cut my gold short yesterday around the entry level. But about these situations in Europe, we are going to discuss during our afternoon meeting. Don't forget, we do have the meeting at 2 p.m. CT, 1 p.m. London. We are, of course, the top point is the US GDP, but I'm afraid I'm afraid that US GDP number might get into the second line, and we are going to be discussing about the situation in Europe. It looks like there might be something might going on over the course of the next few hours. I'm going to watch it very carefully. So been thinking about the flow related to the end of the month, and we were discussing a lot about that yesterday. But it might be totally different things moving the market today. So be careful again, because it's end of the month and because of this events not related to the calendar or whatever. Anything you are going to do on the market should be with smaller than usual, smaller exposure. So yeah, simply take care about your account. So let's discuss what we have. Let's start with Nasdaq. Again, I'm short Nasdaq with very tight stop above most recent latest high, I would say. The thing is that I do understand, based on what we discussed many times, I do understand that somehow, based on the market manipulation, we might hit levels close to 7,850, right? Again, if you are watching first time, so let me explain you one of the reason I'm thinking it's possible. It's based on this possibility of the equal wave moves, right? Especially that we know where the stops are above this and this, above these highs, right? And we have this untested supply over, under, and the latest demand which push market higher, right? So I do understand we might see the rally towards these levels, and frankly, yeah, without this possible events in Europe, probably I would be long, right? We were discussing possibility of the longs yesterday, and actually yesterday, if you are going to check the chart, maybe it wasn't great move to the upside, but overall the day yesterday was positive, right? So let's switch to the 30-minute chart, and what I've been discussing, and here we had and we discussed a few times, right? Here was the setup to go long, right, on this false break to the downside. And you know what, we were discussing this before that happened here, based on this possible head and shoulders, right? If you remember morning meeting, if you remember yesterday morning meeting, you were aware of what might happen. I told you that this possible head and shoulders, and you know, it's something looks like head and shoulder. It's not a head and shoulder because it's not the correct place to call this head and shoulder, right? And I told you that most probably it's not gonna work today, based on the new information I have. You know what? It might work, but that's how market works, right? That's how market works. And looks like over the course of the Tokyo session, we had this risk off. We have this a little bit of the sell-off. Now, towards the end of the session in Tokyo, towards the end of the session in Asia, there is a rally back, but still above yesterday low. So I'm aware of the possibility of the rally, especially that end of the month flow manipulation, window dressing, whatever you want to call it, might take place here, right? And of course, I do understand we might see some kind of the spike higher towards the levels we discussed based on the daily chart. For example, if we are going to get some pump and dump news from the White House administration that yes, everything is fine with China, whoa, goodies. But the situation in Europe currently, based on those informations I have, maybe, you know, maybe I'm trying to overreact into that. So easy, but it's not good situation in Europe, right? So carefully watching the developments in UK as well as in Italy. Okay, so that's one of the reason I'm short, right? But it's not, I'm not falling in love with this position. My first target is around yesterday low, right? But look how quickly the situation in the world might change the view. I'm not switched to ultra bearish sentiment. No, not yet, right? I need to get something more information. So anyway, my short is based on the not on the chart, mostly on the developments we see in UK and Italy. So it's a little bit more speculative position. From the chart perspective, as I mentioned, I do expect that we might see rally here from the intraday perspective. That's what we discussed, the yellow zone here, possible supply 7,700, and from the daily chart we might see even higher levels towards 7,950, right? For now, because of what we have, what I got from the news services, reaction to the downside, right, towards yesterday low, or maybe towards the Monday low, could be in place. So that was one of the reasons I cut my short. If you remember, I was again short gold. I cut my gold around the entry level again, same as 2 days ago. When the news hit the market, and looks like it was a very good idea again, right? To cut. We are trying to recover here on. On gold, and looks like the Tokyo session was dominated by the buyers here, right, on the gold. Now let's switch to the daily chart on the gold, and let's have a look what we have here. If you remember, we were discussing these two blue lines, meaning the big supply zone based on the weekly chart. That's the possible supply based on the weekly chart we have here, all right? And we seen the gap higher on Monday, spike towards the supply and rejection. But frankly, if you remember our first meeting of this week, right, I told you that, okay, the only candle maybe looks bearish, but from the medium-term perspective, as of now, it was still the highest close of the year, right? And looks like that low holds for now. From the intraday perspective, I've been trying to take the advantage of the short side, especially yesterday. Frankly speaking, I've been quite positive, right? Yeah, I've been looking for longs on the indices, right? I've been trading the long side on the indices. But then again, the world we are living, situation is very dynamic and changing very often. So the continuation of the higher prices here on gold possible, right? And because we have quite wide that zone in between 1550 and 1585, taking into the consideration the possibility of the rejections are moving a little bit higher here, right, towards the levels around 1570 for now, right? So we might see this type of the channel creation here on the gold, right? At some point in the future, when we are going to get the some kind of the positive news, it might turn out to be the bear flag, right? But to be honest with you, right now I don't think it might happen, and I think it would be good to have something like this, because we might see sudden spikes on the market, and trying to double some distances. So it would be good to make this type of the measure, right, to the upside, trying to predict where the next targets might be. So looks like for now the 1500 is safe, right? We were discussing yesterday that move back below the weekly open, blue dotted line here, right? Blue dotted line here, as well as below 1525. So those double tops over here and here. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Might spur some profit taking from longs or on gold, but didn't materialize, right? From the higher time frame perspective, didn't materialize. No setup to try to sell the gold based on the higher time frame charts. I've been trying to speculate on the smaller time frames yesterday and day before, but it looks like I've been well against the overall sentiment and trend on the gold. So for now, look for higher levels. And when we are talking about the higher levels, one can ask Piotr, okay, so you are trying to short, didn't work out well, right? Thankfully I closed at around the entry level. So what about the longs? Yeah, to be honest with you, I would like to see any kind of the spike to the downside to see the retest of this top of that yellow range, especially when we are talking about the Monday and Tuesday low here and here, right? So what I would like to see, I would like to see some kind of the spike to the downside, some kind of the lower shadow, and close above that, right? So from trying to visualize what I'm looking for, I would like to see lower shadow, something like this, right? I don't know, maybe 1520, okay, sounds good. This type of the lower shadow and the close above, right? So attempt to break lower, but the overall close on the positive side, right? That would be my long entry with the stop below, right? So that's what I'm looking for on the gold. So again, here I switch from the risk on to a little bit of the risk off. But again, I don't want to bias anyone, right? I don't want influence anyone in the case, oh, Piotr said it says risk off, so yeah, let's go all in. No, you've heard the risk warning, right? And you know, usually my exposure is very low. And right now, when we are approaching end of the month, when the end of the month flow dominates, plus what we have all around the world, my exposure is even lower, right? So just think that way from your risk perspective, okay? So yeah, again, switching from the risk on to risk off on the gold. What about oil? Looks like we might not get the levels we were discussing from the daily chart perspective, right? If you remember, 59, 50, 60 is a level I'm waiting for from the medium and long term perspective as a possibility or opportunity to try to short oil, right? But if the situation right now will escalate, probably we are not going to get there, right? As you can see, upper shadow created yesterday. So doesn't look great right now on oil from the bulls perspective. Upper shadow working fine with this swing high. So it's going to be worth to watch very carefully. It looks like we are going to test finally the levels we were discussing yesterday and day before. From intraday perspective, if you remember, we were discussing the stop hunt to the upside, and we are discussing that it might be similar situation to the downside, and there was a possibility to try to trade alongside of the oil twice yesterday, right? So if you remember, again here from the risk on perspective, I was positive. My setup was positive towards the oil based on the overall market sentiment. I knew that we might see some kind of the pump towards the end of the month, right? Trying to make the window dressing, and we are discussing, wait, EEA, stop hunt to the upside. Let's see where we are going to go after the stop hunt and what kind of the pullback we are going to get. And look, the yellow level right here, the zone ahead of this break, right? Here is your whole zone. Here is your whole zone, right? Ahead of the break, works fine. So if you are trading, alongside, the probably worst case scenario here was stop around the entry level again, okay, on the oil. But right now, switch back to neutral, if not risk off mood. So looking for some kind of the bearish setups. The one thing I have to point here is that sometimes market may go against the overall, sometimes, lately it's very often, against the overall view, meaning that we have some unfilled levels on the market, right? And you know, for me, the switch from risk on to risk off is a little bit too fast, meaning that if we are going to see the escalation in UK and Italy, right, that the events which were not being in the calendar, right, that the special events. So market was not aware, probably was not aware about that. So in that case, we still might see the market is trying to fill the levels we discussed, so a little bit more risk on sentiment. So that's one of the reasons I'm pointing here again about the exposure. We need to have take care about the exposure. So tiny exposure. If you are right, the move is gonna be fast, and that's gonna be fine. If we are wrong, then because of the very tiny exposure, we are not gonna be hurt. So again, as you can see, the base scenario to the upside is to test 59.50 and 60 on the oil, all right? But I do understand that we might not get that high, all right? So I'm watching very carefully the developments around the current levels here around this swing high we've seen a few days ago. Of course, the levels in regards to the possible supports are same as we discussed yesterday, right? In that case, right now is a Monday high and Friday high. So let's switch back, and if you see, let's change the color to the orange, and that's what I'm talking about. That's still possible demand based on what we have and what we discussed from the oil perspective. So it might be the case. So right now let's move that yellow. It might be the case that market will try to take the stops based on the yesterday low, hit either this possible demand or the demand a little bit lower based on the based on the Riley here, right? That could be the case as well. Okay, so not big changes into the when we are talking about the levels, but the changes about the forces on the market. We'll see. Again, I don't want to bias anyone, right? I don't want to bias anyone. So do your own research before you execute any kind of the trade, right? Okay, let's have the discussion about the FX majors. Let's start with the cable. All right. So there was a few things we discussed because the pound been discussed from the positive and negative side. From the negative side, let's start with the negative sides with the sellers, right? And there was a great reason to try to fade the latest pound rally yesterday. Why? Because we hit on Tuesday, we hit top of the channel on the daily chart, right? Hitting the top of the channel, it's not one reason why you should take the position, right? There was a thing I've been trying to explain already quite a few times. I love this upper shadow, this type of the upper shadow, right? Especially with the daily close. I'm calling this game of the shadows, right? And I've been talking about this during the educational webinars we held in June, if you remember. If not, then I encourage you to visit the Light Forex archive section and to go through these webinars. They were recorded, they are long, but come on, it's free. You are not going to get that type of the knowledge free anywhere, right? Only here. I know that people sometimes oh, it's free, so it's not worth. Yeah, it's your choice, guys. Anyway, that was one of the reasons we discussed the possibility of the pound sell-off. Then market been hit by the news that looks like the Boris Johnson, even after the Merkel warmer words, even after news that the agreement might be reopened, market got yesterday as Boris Johnson wants to go anyway hard way with the Brexit, right? So and then the information late afternoon about the about the people on the street, right? Again, I didn't confirm that, so it's based on only what I get from the news services. But anyway, it looks like something is going on because the daily close was weak, right? There is a lower shadow because of the retest of the 2150, and that's something we discussed quite a few times based on this demand visible here from the 22nd of the August, right? So there was a lower shadow, there was a bounce, right? And we are trying to use the template we've seen before, right? On the 8th and the 9th of August, right? Huge sell-off, right? The size similar, right? So we were checking what was the bounce, right? That was the bounce here, right? So that's what we measure it, right? That's why we have the top of this yellow range, same as here, right? The thing is that after this type of the consolidation, we went higher on the pound. The thing is that if the situation will escalate in UK, the end of that consolidation might be a little bit different. So before we left yesterday, I've mentioned if you are looking for a pound to sell, you've got your level, right? And if you were listening carefully, congratulations, right? You grab nice chunk of the pips, right? Congratulations. But only if you are listening carefully. If not, I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm sitting short pound and I'm looking again. It's not based on the chart, it's based on the news flow. So completely different story. In that case, I'm looking for a retest of the yesterday low. It might not materialize in case of the template we have here. In case we are going to try to do the stuff we've seen in the mid of the August, right? Looks like I'm gonna have plenty of time to escape from my short, even with profit, right? So I'm going to watch the developments very carefully. But we also discussed that because of the break of this intraday channel you see here, all right, we might double that range to the downside, and that was 21.35, the bottom of this possible demand, orange demand. So yeah, I do have my chance. So because of what is going on in UK, I do expect pound might be under pressure. And if you remember, one of the because I've been quite positive, but of course after all those news hits the market, all the positive sentiment towards the pound is off on my side, right? I've been talking about the possible long pound versus euro, right? But here we have a similar, we might see similar developments in Italy. So overall, euro pound, I'm gonna I'm going to watch for fun euro pound, right? Because at some point I do believe, if you remember, we were watching the spread between the German 10-year yields and US 10-year yields. There is a space to go to the downside. So I think as well, there is a space on the dollar index to go to the upside. I think that right now dollar got the great chance. So if the bulls wants to attack 100, that's the best thing to do right now, besides what we have on the charts, right? And there are other developments, and not necessarily charts are very, very important right now. So it's a great chance for a dollar bulls to try to push higher, right? So in that case, I still have a problem to find, because of the very low volatility here. I still have a problem to try to find a good entry level on euro dollar. For now, it's this 11.15. As we got back, there was a retest only on Tuesday, right? And that's what I missed right here. Hopefully we can get some retest or spike or whatever. So looks like 11.15 and the next 11.60 weekly open as a next possible supply, 110. So I think that because of what is going on, there is a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying there is a possibility we might to take out finally this low, as well as the swing low from the daily chart created the very beginning of the August, trying to hit the stops and finally to start to consume this big demand zone based on the weekly chart, blue color, as you can see, down towards 108. And I've been quite positive yesterday towards the dollar yen. To be honest with you, going neutral right now. Might see some fireworks, and finally we might see the levels we were discussing at the beginning of the week, right? That I like 105.25.15, but also we were discussing that market doesn't want to go that low, right? There were over the course after the huge sell-off Niagara Falls, market was trying to hold higher levels, right? And we built the plan to try to go long in case of the false break to the downside, right? But right now I'm switching to neutral. So longs from that level after the false break are off. The idea to go long, at least for now, is off, right? It might change over the course of the next few hours, and we might have the discussion again about the possibility to go long even during our afternoon meeting. Because if we are going to get, I don't know, huge GDP number out of the US, that might be good reason to try to spike higher, right? So based on the information I have right now, and based on what we see right now, that's my view just for the London session, just for the London Open. So again, don't be surprised if we are going to get risk of sentiment right at the London Open. Guys, that was my pleasure to be with you here. Don't forget, 2 p.m. CT, 1 p.m. London, we are going to cover US GDP live. You are more than welcome to join me here, Light Forex Global YouTube channel. See you around within the next few hours. Goodbye.